So now we're going to talk about schedule management.
Right, so this is my sort of love-hate topic. A lot of effort normally goes into developing a project schedule, and you have to have a proper work breakdown structure, detailed definition of work packages, and as Koos said before, realistic times, how you will hand over, what your key milestones are. And often we also look at things like, what is your construction manpower density, for instance, in a specific area? Can you get all the construction people in there? Can you get all the construction people from within the country? Must you import people? All those sort of things. You look at your contracting plan, you try and balance the resources and so on, and look at the activities. It is very important to set a proper realistic schedule, and that will allow people to do the project and achieve the sort of outcome. We've had some projects that we did where the actual project schedule and the schedule that we promised to the business and the time we set within which we will start producing the product was not very realistic. And it creates a lot of issues for the business because they start committing the actual sales and things like that. And now you're late and you start paying penalties and all sorts of things like that. So the issue is, in a way, to make sure you have a schedule that's realistic, make sure you benchmark the schedule against similar projects that you think you can do it and you will actually achieve it. Otherwise, we create problems with lots of people. Next slide, James. So the problem now comes in that, very often people jump in and they start programming the schedule on Primavera and master schedule and or project, Microsoft projects and those sort of things. And they don't look at how do you want to do this and what is the issues that the owner really require and what can you deliver. So in this example, for instance, if you look at this line, gas 1, it says here, the owner would like to have power, in this case, at the end of 2013 produced. And the way we do this is we call this a top-down thing. So from the top, you get what the owner wants, and then we start from the bottom up and try and see, can we meet that? And we don't do that through a Primavera schedule. We do that through a level 1 or level 2 schedule where experienced people sit around the table and you actually look at this. So in this example, when we plan this project from the bottom up, we could only finish the project here, end of Q1 2015. And this gives us the big gap here. And that big gap, we now have to address. What often happens is actually the project team sort of argues about the Primavera schedule for a long time, but this essential high-level planning doesn't happen, and the project runs on and on and on with everybody's heads in the sand, and in the end you end up at this point where you always said you would end up, and you're actually late according to your promises. So we find this master scheduling approach a very useful approach to try and, right at the beginning of a project, start thinking about it and start looking at how can you align the two. And on the next slide, for this specific project, I'll show you just a few things. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Just go back one step, James. So here, you can see here at the bottom, that is what we actually delivered in the end. So we delivered the project about a quarter late, but we knew it from very early on that that is when we will deliver the project, and it actually went well. And the next slide is just a picture of that plant, that power station, and some examples of the things we did. So we used a modular design power station, which was very fast to construct. We changed the design of the substation. We used prefabricated buildings, for example, and that actually helped us to get in time. But in order to do this, you must start early. It doesn't help when you're in trouble and you've committed everything that you only realize this. And this is what we really found the benefit of master scheduling. Thanks, James. So this is just very quickly an example of how we sort of show on a master schedule type basis where we are in terms of the schedule, whether we're behind or ahead, rather than try and show a 10,000 based activity program. So we try and show the whole project, whether it's small or big, on one page, and the key elements are there, and you can see which elements are late, which elements are early, and we try to visually show everybody where we stand and what we need to do. Thanks, James. All right, so if you just pull that all together very quickly, contracting strategy, you must make sure the contracting strategy fits the project and the risk and the roles are properly defined. You must make sure you have the proper work breakdown structure. In fact, we talk about the facility breakdown structure, which is the scope, and the work breakdown structure, which is the work to be done by the engineers and the constructors. We need to make sure we have sound estimates, costs, and schedules against which to track the schedule. And then we often use earned value management in terms of scope and cost to say, you know, are we spending more money per activity than the budget, less money? Are we taking longer and shorter? That helps us to actually predict the end of job cost much more effectively. And as James also indicated, you need to do that to see where your project is heading. If you can't do that, you know, you don't know where you can take action, and the project end date will just be when it will end, not you have no ability to influence it or correct things and so on. Quality is very important of the schedule, so we often do audits of the schedule quality to make sure all the links and the networks work, the critical path is correct. Change management, also very important, to make sure you only do what is required. Regular reporting so that people, and we can take action on things, as I said, and effective communication and those sort of things. And I think that's the one thing in an integrated team that really helps, is it really facilitates a lot better communication. Thank you. All right, so the slide is just around commissioning and ramp up, because once you build a project and so on, and you now are trying to commission it and ramp it up, if you now have problems, you will actually make the project lose a lot of money. All the capital is spent, but the income is delayed, and it makes a huge impact on the project NPV. If you remember that slide that Koos showed, it's one of the 4 top things that influences the effective outcome as a project is planning for a successful startup. And on the right-hand side here, you can see how the different resources come on. And here you start bringing on your commissioning team and your operators and so on, so that they can be ready. To really plan properly for an effective startup is also very important, and to be able to address problems that come up. I mean, a startup is never smooth. Things don't work. The pump doesn't pump. The compressor doesn't want to compress properly. So you need a backup team, a troubleshooting team, and the right sort of experts on site, on hand, there in the middle of the night to help you solve a problem and to get commissioning happening smoothly. Thank you.
Yeah, I would add to our experiences around commissioning have shown that the earlier we can have a commissioning party on board, the better. So definitely during the design phase, having the commissioning body on board. And to integrate them into the project team. We've had a lot of projects in the past where there was a very adversarial relationship between the build team and the commissioning team, and there was a lot of fingers pointed. What we found we get better results is if we bring them on early, we actually put them in the trailer with the design team. And the analogy they use I like is, we're going to give you the answers to the test before we give you the test. So we're going to show you exactly what we're going to test for. And our goal is that you pass everything first time. We don't actually want you to fail the commissioning, which obviously we don't, but I think on some projects the culture is such that there's some kind of joy in people failing the commissioning test, and that just hurts the owner. So the big point being, the earlier you get the commissioning process started in the design phase, the shorter and more successful the commissioning will be at the end.
Yeah, and what's also very important is the handover, because in this time you're actually handing over between the construction people and the operating people. And if they have not been involved early, they say, oh, I don't like this. This valve should be turned around, or the steps are not right. And now you waste a lot of time trying to hand over the facility to the people that must start it up.
Yeah, what I do find is that you actually start commissioning basically the day one when you start your implementation, because every piece of equipment you want to start looking at and cold commission and make sure that piece is fine. So at the end of the day, you do commissioning, you're actually only running your interfaces, and that helps a lot.
So a little bit about the lean processes that have been integrated into scheduling. These are not things that were kind of conceptually master planned. There, once you tie people together financially, they figure out, we got to be able to run the schedules in a different way than usual. So we're doing a lot of modeling, and the foremen, so the people in the lower left, these are the people that are actually involved in designing and building the project. And the upper right is making sure that all the content is populated. And the lower right, each of those squares is a task that needs to be done, and each color is a different company. So they're collaboratively mapping out what we're going to build. And then the next step, which is not always that logical, is you then have to build what you modeled. So this shows us laying out in the field directly from the model, and you can see the ductwork hangers. So we haven't poured the concrete decks yet, but we've already inserted all of the hangers for where the prefabricated ductwork will go. So we've made a very similar transition that Prik presented, of moving from this 10,000 activity master schedule to a collaborative high-level milestone schedule developed by the entire team. So this is multiple companies sitting and mapping out with sticky notes how we're going to get from the feasibility through to the permit submittal phase. And the lower right, this is actually a 4.5-year project. And each of the colored boxes is a different design package, and the orange is the construction durations. So this easily could be a 10,000 line item schedule, but it's represented on one 11 by 17 sheet of paper. It's relatively easy for us to tell if we're ahead of schedule or behind schedule. And the other big piece is we've moved away from kind of planning discrete activities and trying to create flow on the project. So again, getting all the foremen involved. The lower right-hand corner is a 9-story building, and each of the blocks is a week's worth of work by one trade on one area of one floor. And so you can see when it looks like a nice stairway, that means that we've created flow where everyone gets a dedicated work area, and they all have 1 week to finish, and they need to move to the next area because the next trade is right behind them. So this is an easier tool for the people in the field to actually use. It's very visual, and you can easily run a vertical string across the schedule to keep track of where you are.